Welcome back to the Functional Spirituality Podcast. My name is Ava Arani, and I'm here to share with you the second part of the Mindwork series. And this episode is on our map of reality. So anyone who's studied hypnotherapy or the subconscious mind would be familiar with this idea that we have a existing set of beliefs or a life script that very much determine how we experience the world and even how our destiny play out. So how our life circumstances are shaped by the map of reality or our beliefs that we hold inside of our mind. And just to share and show how far-reaching this is, I want to start with this idea that everything is a story. So every experience that you have, every thought that you have, everything that you know is, anything that you know through the mind at least, is a story. And these stories that we have that determine how we experience our reality, they have different levels of strength. They hold different levels of truth for us. And I want this to be kept in your mind as I explain the map of reality and how it's formed from an evolutionary standpoint, so that we can take a little bit of the power back for our experience when we recognize that everything that we experience is a story, and we do have the power to change the story, which means we have the power to change, affect, and transform our experience. So why do we have these stories? Why do we have a map of reality? Why do we have a set of belief systems that determine the outcomes of our experience? And these weren't put in place by God to confuse us or damn us like some higher power has trapped us in this matrix in any way like that. It's actually just a matter of evolution, and really it's a matter of adaptation. So the way that the animals and the plants and nature has evolved on planet Earth is a matter of survival and a matter of adaptation. And as we looked at in the previous episode, that our brains have evolved to take care of the survival mechanisms and requirements needed for the human animal and other animals to survive and to function. However, the basic requirements for survival do not let an organism live outside of where its instincts and old brain functions and operations normally operate. So, in order to survive to a variety of different environments, to changing circumstances, a certain level of thinking, planning, problem solving would be advantageous. And that's exactly what our new brain and our cortex allows us to do. It allows us to think, to imagine the future, to imagine the past, and to derive different reference points and to develop different strategies for how to learn from our environment as well as how to overcome our environment. And this capacity, as you can see, has a huge evolutionary advantage in the way that the human being has been able to overcome every environment on the planet. The human being has the capacity to survive and to grow and to reproduce on every continent of the planet and in every corner of this earth. So this is very much attributed to our new brain and our conscious mind having the intentions to survive and to thrive in these places, and then having the capacity to learn and develop strategies to do so. And this is obviously a benefit of our evolution. The human nervous system, the human brain, is a really sophisticated piece of nature. A really specific piece of hardware, you could say. And that adaptability, it does come at a price in some way that the complexity of the human nervous system has its downfalls in some way as well. It is susceptible to built-in contradictions. It's susceptible to contradictions between the hardware and the software. Unfortunately, they're not always compatible. So the thoughts that we might consciously have in this moment may not be totally aligned with the programs that have been set in place at a different time. And the reasons that we have these programs that are set in place is because the human brain, the human nervous system, it's what we might call an open system. So it has the capacity to think ahead into the future and the past, and it has the capacity to imagine the future and to imagine what happened in the past. And this high level of openness, this imagination and this projection that we can do into the future, these dreams that we can have, and the distances we can propel our mind forward and backward in all space and time across the universe, that openness, it requires some stability. It requires some anchoring. It requires some things to be closed, some underlying assumptions to be there, some anchor for which the mind can then roam freely and anticipate and imagine. So that structure that's required is what we would call the beliefs or the map of reality. And the human being is born with this readiness to be programmed by life. It's born with the readiness to learn from the environment, to learn from the parents, and to get some ground level, some anchor worldview about how things work, some assumptions to exist there in the background, on top of which all of the thoughts and imaginations and processes and problem solving can function on top of. So this readiness to be programmed by life is not something unique only to human beings. I love this example of an elephant that is being trained or a performing element, or one that is domesticated by human beings in some way. It is tied, it has a rope tied around its neck, and that rope connected to a spike in the floor from a young age. And when the baby elephant tries to move, it's obviously attached or secured to that space by that stake, by that spike in the floor. However, when the elephant grows older and gets bigger and stronger, that stake physically isn't able to hold the elephant in place anymore. However, so if the elephant wanted, it could definitely move around and remove the stake from the floor, from the ground. However, the elephant wouldn't even try to do so because it was programmed from a young age that it cannot move that stake, that any efforts to move the stake would be futile. So it's been programmed, it understands, it has a baseline assumption of its capacities, and that's been established from a young age. And unless it has the conscious capacity to question that, if it wants to adapt to a new situation, it might say, hey, can I move this stake? Is it possible? Why wouldn't it be? And are my limitations justified? If it doesn't have that capacity to contemplate, it will be limited by its conditionings and its beliefs. So our maps of reality have been functioning since a young age, and it very much helps us to navigate the world, to have that baseline assumption about what things are and how the world works. For example, it would take too much energy. It wouldn't be practical if every time I saw a round, shiny red object, I needed to relearn and readdress and re-question if that is an apple and if it is suitable for me to eat. So when I see an object that looks like an apple, I'm going to automatically assume that I can eat it, where someone else might automatically assume that it's poisonous if they know previously